Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that you are free to participate by entering questions you have in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end to respond to them. My name is Elizabeth Moray. I am VP of Clinical for Alma. I'm also a practicing psychologist, and my practice is supported by Alma. I treat primarily adults and specialize in acceptance and commitment therapy, and also in work with women experiencing mental health concerns associated with reproductive treatment. So one of the things about Alma's mission that I think I appreciate most is that helping providers build the right type of practice or caseload to meet their needs and goals is really every bit as important to us as helping clients find just the right provider. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity to bring the community together to talk about private practice growth and finding the right provider-client fit. I am incredibly fortunate to be joined by three fellow Alma members, each of whom has a really unique perspective and journey to bring to this conversation. And I'll take a moment now to introduce each of them. Paul Fitzgerald is a licensed social worker who began his career in the nonprofit field. He's previously worked for a number of community mental health clinics where he treated clients living in the New York City shelter system. He switched to full-time private practice about 4 years ago and divides his practice between seeing clients and supervising LMSWs. Gary Hominick is a licensed professional counselor and certified sex addiction therapist. Gary's been in the mental health field for over a decade. He started his journey as a case manager at a community mental health center, then a substance abuse counselor, then a clinical supervisor, and then finally lead clinical supervisor. He was trained as a certified sex addiction therapist and decided to start in the exciting and scary world of private practice about 2 years ago. Last but not least, Lucy Romo is a licensed clinical social worker in California, Nevada, and Texas, with 6 years of clinical experience supporting adults and couples experiencing a variety of challenges. Her approach is trauma-informed, person-centered, and compassion-focused. She launched her private practice last fall. So let's dive in. Paul, I'm going to start with you. And I'm wondering if you could share with us a bit about what drew you to the mental health field.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Elizabeth. So for me, originally, I recognized that my own mental health challenges that I've had since childhood were something that I benefited a great deal from therapy, from the mental health field in general. But it wasn't until certainly later in life, dropping out of college a few times that I realized, oh, this is something that I could do too. And in fact, that there's something where perhaps in sort of like the wounded healer model, that someone who's dealt with their own mental health issues might actually be a good fit for being able to support others. At that point, I had turned some of the volunteering projects I did into working in the nonprofit field, got my MSW, originally was doing more care coordination, like indirect client services, and realized, oh wow, I really feel bad every time I refer someone to a therapist. I really like people's stories. I really like working in this sort of more direct clinical way. And thankfully, LMSW is one of the social work, one of those fields that you can pivot into psychotherapy. And that's how I ended up shifting into doing that and realized, oh, this is really what I love and feel passionate about.
Thank you. I particularly appreciate your highlighting the kind of personal reasons that we find our way into the field. And I think one of the things we're going to talk about is, are the personal reasons behind why private practice ends up being a good fit for many of us. So along those lines, Lucy, you started your private practice relatively recently, and I'm curious to hear what influenced your decision to pursue this pathway into private practice?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately for me, burnout was a huge factor in making that switch. I always knew that I wanted to end up here, but what ultimately led me there last fall, it was burnout. I was working for a really large agency too many sessions every week. I think I was seeing 35 clients a week, every single week with just no breaks. And I was incredibly burnt out on top of, personal life stressors happening at the time. And I noticed it started impacting my quality of work and also my enjoyment of work. And both of those scared me because I'm still a fairly new clinician. And I also felt kind of hypocritical. I talked to my clients about boundaries and self-care, and I just felt like I didn't have capacity to do that for myself because of my circumstances. And I ended up taking 2 days off work and realized, wow, that was so helpful. I need to be able to do that more. And PTO being so limited, I feel like I needed a role that gave me time freedom. So I think time was a huge contributing factor for me as well. I wanted to be able to take care of myself so that I enjoyed my job and also was still effective at it. So I ended up I quit my job and I took a month sabbatical to just process everything and decompress and kind of gather my thoughts. And it was that point when I realized, okay, this is sooner than I anticipated, but it just kind of makes sense for what I need right now. And so I decided to just launch my practice from there. So, yeah, that's kind of what led me to that point.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed about what you shared is that there was an element of wanting to have control over your own time. And I'm curious to kind of look at other kinds of opportunity to own our careers that private practice can allow. And so I want to talk a little bit about identifying your niche as a provider and how that sense of who you are and what you want to do has changed or evolved over time. Gary, I know that you have actively transitioned your branding from sex and porn addiction to helping men repair and enrich their relationships. So I'm curious, how has that language shift in your marketing impacted what you're doing day to day in your practice?
So I was thinking about whenever I first meet with a client, doing a treatment plan, what do you want to get out of counseling? And I try to listen to the answer of what do you want to get out of counseling? What brings you here? Very few of my clients go, Gary, I've got an addiction and I need to get it over. Gary, I need to save my marriage. Gary, I got caught doing this. My wife's the most important thing in the world to me. I don't know how I hurt her this much. And I've got to, and that's why I got those words, repair and enrich my relationship. And so I'd kind of shifted. If you saw my website from a year ago, it would have said sex and porn addiction, virtual therapy, and text. Now it says helping men repair and enrich their relationships. And it goes beyond just acting out sexually. It's most of my clients, they say, now that I've got a handle of that, I still don't have the relationship that I want. Okay, Lee, let's get to work. And so I just felt like one, it was more marketable. Two, it's more of what I did. It's more of what I did with a lot of my clients. I don't talk about the acting out near as much as I originally thought I would. So given what they tell me when I say, what do you want to get out of this? What brings you here? That's when I said, let me shift my marketing, my niche, my specialty to that.
It's so interesting how the language that was being used in session in those moments that allowed you to feel most impactful then provided this kind of foundation for the language you could use with the external world to describe how you thought you could be effective and impactful in people's lives. And so I'm curious to hear more about what mattered most when you built your client base, whether there was a specific population you found it fulfilling to work with or a concern that you felt really equipped to address. And Paul, I'll start with you. Can you talk a little bit about the specialties you've developed as a part of your practice?
Yeah, sure. And let me just say that, especially when first starting, perhaps as long as the first year, I very much had what's sometimes referred to as a scarcity mindset, which is this is private practice, it's brand new, it's just me. I'll take what I can get, and even if someone was presenting with something where they were in a population that I didn't feel comfortable with, it was like, well, I mean, got to pay my rent, so I have to see this person. it definitely took me a little while to realize that that was not only, harming clients potentially, but harming me. Maybe harm is a strong word, but it wasn't an ideal connection and it wasn't the exact kind of fit that we're talking about. What ultimately led me, so it was, some of it was those experiences, realizing, oh, this is what I'm not good at. And I think it's good early on in your practice to, find that growth edge. What's something where you're not 100% sure that this is exactly what's in your wheelhouse, but I'll try it. I'll see if I can work with this person and be willing to have that open conversation and refer them out if necessary. For me, as I, you know, as I started seeing more clients and realizing what felt best and where I saw the most results for people, that's when I moved more into realizing, oh, well, I do feel like I want to learn more about working with people who have OCD. I am interested in phobias. I do want to, work more with people who have sort of specific kinds of trauma and anxiety, and was able to then transition into getting more education, more knowledge, and therefore practicing to reach out more to those kinds of clients.
Paul, I love how you really emphasize the learning piece of this, the learning what you do want, and maybe even more importantly, learning what you don't want, and how that learning really unfolds over time. It wasn't something that you had figured out on day one of private practice. And I think we heard some of that from you too, Gary, that it is something that does evolve over time. So Lucy, I wondered if you'd be willing to share that learning process for you in terms of identifying your specific areas of focus as a provider.
Yeah, so most of my experience prior to private practice was in the medical field, working in hospitals, and I spent a lot of time in postpartum in NICU with patients, and that is kind of when I first started to see that gap in care in real time. And I'm sure anyone who's had a child in a hospital can relate to this, but you have a baby, your whole life has changed. You complete one assessment and then they kind of just send you on your way if you haven't been flagged. And so that's kind of when it stood out to me that moms need so much more support. I mean, parents in general need so much more support. And that's kind of what built this niche that I have of now it's kind of transitioned to also infertility, pregnancy, and postpartum, both with individuals and couples. But kind of going off of what Paul mentioned earlier in terms of like building your client base, and what stands out to me there is also fit, because, and I can speak to this as a new clinician, I'm still new to private practice. Saying yes is so easy to just any client that reaches out, any consultation that you have, you're excited, you're energized, at the end of the day, this is our job. And so income matters. And it's so easy to just say yes to everyone. But
Who wants to
what
turn people
matters,
down, right? Yeah.
right? Yeah. And who wants to turn money down too, right? Like that's such a hard decision to make. But I am so proud of myself for using that lens in from the first interactions with clients and the consultations, and really taking fit into account, like Paul said, from both ends of if I feel equipped and if I am interested in supporting whatever population that they come from, and vice versa. If they feel comfortable and like I'm a good fit for them, it's a two-way street. And so I feel like I've always been careful to still be semi-selective at what type of clients that I take on, even if that means I'm making less money at the end of the day. That's what's important to me.
So to get a little nitty gritty, I'm curious about how you find clients who you do want to say yes to, right? The ones who really represent that fit. And Lucy, I don't know if you want to answer that to kick us off, and then I'll go on to Gary.
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, the first 2 months after I launched, I had 0 clients. And again, income is important. And so that was really scary for me. There's only so much that I can control at that point. And so those first 2 months, I wasn't doing sessions. I spent all of my time marketing and networking. I'm fairly new to my area as well, and so it was also a way for me to get to know people in my community. But I'm licensed in 3 states. I only live in one of those states, and so a lot of it was virtual marketing. So I ended up creating this huge Excel spreadsheet of separating, California, Nevada, Texas. And then based off of my niche, I wrote in names, phone numbers, emails of OBGYNs, women's health centers, holistic health practitioners, doulas, lactation consultants, fertility clinics, chiropractors, daycare centers, preschools, even like children's clothing stores. I was unapologetic. I was reaching out to everyone. And so if they were local, I would go in person, introduce myself. If they weren't local, I would call, and if I could get a hold of someone, or if I found an email, I would send them an email and just let them know that I'm available. And if I was able to get a hold of someone, I sometimes was able to schedule a meeting, again, either in person or Zoom or phone calls. And then sometimes they wanted my information to provide to their patients. So I also had opportunities to mail business cards to their offices, or create some sort of, if they have social media, create like a post that they can share on their social media, letting them know that my resources are available with like my website information and things like that. So I hit the ground running in the beginning and spent all of my time just creating relationships in the community, both locally and out of state, to just let people know, like, hey, I'm here, I'm eager, I'm available. I want to help in ways that maybe their services aren't able to reach. And here's my information. So it was a lot of that in the beginning. And I feel like that was the only thing that was in my control. And it really helped me create my practice.
Yeah, wow, that was both a really targeted and really broad approach. And it's great that it panned out the way it did. Gary, you talked a bit about, how you have marketed your niche. How do you find clients? Like what that, as Lucy just shared, what specifically have you done to get yourself in front of the kind of people who might best benefit from your services?
I always tell people that your networking needs to be intentional and specific. If you're posting on Facebook, on whatever, hey, who wants to network? Good luck. If you're saying who wants to network with somebody who does A, B, C, and D, then you're kind of narrowing it down a little bit. For me personally, I network with CPITs, certified partner trauma therapists, because they're seeing my clients' spouses. So I want to talk to my friend Christy, who that's all she does, betrayal trauma, because that's just such a hotbed of potential referrals both ways. Because when I tell my clients, I want to be able to support you, and I want to be able to tell you if your partner wants to see someone I like, so they don't have to go to Psychology Today, to Alma, to go through 100 different search results. I only network with couples counselors who deal with infidelity. If it's a general couples counselors, I don't network with them. Or I do, but I don't really send a whole lot of people, because I want them to have some specific training in the exact thing I'm looking for. Now, on the rare case, I do have someone that's wanting kind of maybe more general relationship help. Great. Most of my caseload are coming to me for a specific reason. About 85% of them got caught doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. And so making sure that networking is a two-way street, not just so I hope they send people my way, I hope I send people their way. If you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And the people I've networked with who I haven't sent anyone their way, they haven't sent anyone my way. So that's kind of how I tried to narrow in how I network with people, and not just casting a huge blanket out there and asking who wants to meet up on a Zoom call for coffee.
Yeah, for me, I think that, to sort of provide like a slightly alternate perspective, I never even felt compelled to make my own website or go out of my way to do sort of that kind of very like tangible, specific networking. One of the things that early on I found that really helped was paying to get a professional headshot, and really thinking intentionally about in the, this would have been true for website too, but in the profiles I do have, Psychology Today, Alma, etc. So many of these profiles seem so similar. What's going to make mine stand out a little bit? What's going to feel true and honest to me? The networking that I found that can also be helpful is almost like I guess this is the same thing, but like very specific. Like, are there, like, for example, within Alma and the community hub, there are places where people post they're searching for therapists. Oh, that's a great way for certain clients. I can see specifically, oh, this would be a good person for me to reach out to. As you get to, and we may end up talking a little bit about this, as you build more of a community of, colleagues, friends, these are people who can, in a more sort of like organic way, share with you the resources they have, the clients they're trying to refer, the people they know. So I really like that. It's really good to hear that, even though Lucy, Gary, and I all sort of took sort of like these different approaches, all of them contributed to being able to find clients that generally feel good for us.
Yeah, and I want to kind of move off of that to a similar factor that can help you find clients that are good for you and that you are good for them. And that is the decision to accept insurance. And so I'm curious, each of you probably had a different reason for wanting to be in network with insurance companies. And I wondered if you'd be willing to share how that has impacted the practice you've been able to build. And I'll let any one of you jump in and start.
I can jump in on that one. So initially it was, I wanted to fill some spots on my caseload. I wanted to have that, as we've talked about, this is our career, this is a business, and I try to at times think business minded. And so it's a way to do that. On the other side of it, it's something that I've come to find not a lot of clients know that they can see a counselor utilizing their insurance. And so I like that places like Alma do that advertising that say, hey, guess what? You can actually use your insurance and you could possibly pay $10. I have one guy paying $0 a session. It's got amazing benefits. And so, doing that, and then like I said, places like Alma that do kind of do that advertising to get the message out of saying, you don't have to be rich to see a therapist. And so, some of my most fulfilling clients that I work with for both me and for them are my insurance clients. And yeah, it's a little less than my cash pay rate, but it's not breaking the bank. So it was a really good no-brainer decision for me. It was my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah, I think I'm similar in that way to Gary. Part of it was, I mean, I had no clients. And so after 2 months of trying it on my own and muscling through, I was like, okay, I think it's time to explore other options. And again, I didn't know that that was going to be the path that I went down, but it worked out. So part of it was that wanting to build my caseload. And another part was that bleeding heart of, I know that not everyone can afford, full rate therapy. It's ridiculous. I can't even afford it. So I couldn't expect everyone else to do that either. And so it felt good too, to remove one of the barriers to care for people, of increasing access to care, specifically with me, where I didn't have to be limited to a specific socioeconomic status with my clients, but I could work with whoever had certain insurance plans. So it definitely helped build my caseload, which I'm so thankful for. And it also became a lot easier, talking about niche earlier, to find clients within that niche because of the filtering tools. And so majority of the time, I don't know the percentage, but most of the time when someone reaches out for a consultation through Alma, it's actually an accurate match where their needs are aligning with what I can provide and what I feel effective at providing for them, which is again like a dual benefit for them going through Alma.
For me, in addition to the practical, finding people is easier when you're taking insurance, there's also the ethical component of, I believe that therapy should be affordable. I believe that you shouldn't have to, if you're lucky enough to even have health insurance, you should be able to access mental health care the same as you access anything else. And one of the things that stopped me from going into private practice originally was the idea of, oh, well, I'm only going to be able to work with people who are essentially able to, wealthy enough to afford therapy. Through being able to take insurance through Alma made me feel like it was worth starting in private practice because I knew that I could make therapy somewhat more accessible to people. And for me, part of the finding fit is feeling like I, you know, am in line with my own ethics around who I'm seeing and who I'm supporting. And for me, knowing that I can say, I only see people through insurance because I know that there are plenty of people who have insurance and are struggling to find a therapist.
So in addition to being able to align your work with your ethics or your vision, your mission, I'm wondering about how private practice has allowed you to align your work with your life outside of work, the things and the people you care about in the times that you're not working. Paul, I know that you'd mentioned that you've spent some time supervising LMSWs, and so I'm curious to hear how you have balanced your professional roles with your life outside of work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Private practice, especially solo private practice, offers a great deal of freedom. And for me, the starting point is always, connected to what Lucy said. What is burning out? What is compassion fatigue? How did I not really have control over that in previous jobs in, group practice or community mental health? And what would it mean for me to actually feel like I could make some decisions around how many clients is the right amount to see per day, how many is the right amount per week? I also found that one of the things that was certainly missing for me in my early years certainly as the LMSW or as a clinician was being able to have quality, affordable supervision. So it really lined up for me that, oh, this is something that I can both do and make money as well as offer, again, sort of in line with my values. I find also that having a mix of seeing people for supervision as well as seeing clients also contributes to not feeling that same burnout, because though there's some similarity, it's not the same as, just straight seeing, what are just clients the entire week. I think one of the benefits of private practice is you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to have a side hustle or anything that's not just seeing clients, you get to decide how many you want to see and how you want to organize your life.
Barry and Lucy, any thoughts on how making the decision to be in private practice has allowed you to find balance or to prioritize other things in your life outside of your role in providing direct client care?
Similar to what Paul said, that freedom, that flexibility. I don't know if y'all could hear my toddler screaming in the background. But one of the big things that I want, someone asked, Maggie is my older daughter's name. When Maggie's 20, I want them to say, hey, can you tell me about your childhood? And she said, yeah, my dad was present and there and not stressed, and coming home and saying, Maggie, just leave me alone, that kind of thing. And so that was one of the big driving forces behind having such a flexible job, being able to, I take her to school every single morning. I pick her up, and she does half days. I pick her up in the morning as well. I'm able to make every single dance recital, to go just like everything. My previous job, I could not. So for me, that balance, and that's how I fill my cup, by tickling my 4-year-old and 1-year-old daughter. So the flexibility and the freedom to do that, it was just one of, if not the number one reason I wanted that flexibility.
Yeah, I think all across the board, that's like the primary motivator for getting into private practice is just having autonomy and freedom. And so for me, I really noticed this, again, new to private practice. I had my birthday recently, and the way that I spent my birthday, it felt like any other day. And that was actually a good thing, because it meant that I am now living my life in alignment with how I want to be living it, not just on special occasions or weekends or holidays, but I get to actually incorporate the things that I enjoy into my routine every single day. And that it was just a pinch me moment of, I can't believe I'm here, and I can't believe that I've created this life for myself. And I mean, if other people want to do it, I want that for them too, because no job for me has ever compared to having that level of autonomy and freedom.
Well, happy belated birthday, and what a great
Thank you.
gift to come to that realization on your birthday that you've really chosen a life that you don't want to escape from on your birthday. So thank you for sharing that. We're coming down the home stretch, and I would like to move into more rapid fire questions. And so we're going to go in order. I'll have Paul, Gary, and then Lucy answer. So the first rapid fire question is, if you could never work as a therapist again, what would you miss most about your job? And I'm adding this in at the 11th hour. What would you do instead?
Good question. I'd miss most the opportunity to like learn about people's lives in this very deep and authentic way. You can go outside and talk to strangers or have interactions with many other jobs, but as a therapist, you get a very specific insight into people who would otherwise be strangers you never knew that I really appreciate. And I think, if someone asks, why should I be a therapist, or should I be a therapist? I say, are you really interested in people's stories? Like, or do you find people generally be boring? That's a good way to decide. If I wasn't a therapist, I think, and let's go farther, if I wasn't like a social worker of any kind, I think a teacher probably. There was a time where I sort of like entertained the idea, is that what I'd want to do? Which I think, also speaks to seeking some of that connection. But I think that's probably where you would have found me, like, somewhere in high school trying to be the cool teacher.
I think one of the things I'd miss, other than the feeling that I've made difference, that very cliched, leaving the world better than I found it. I like it when people ask me what I do and I get to tell them what I do. I talk to friends, family members, or whoever's like, what do you do? Oh, I'm an accountant. I'm like, okay, that's a very important job. I said, but for me, that's just boring. And I don't want to ask you about your accounting work. But I think it's neat when I say, oh, I'm a counselor, I always get, oh, what? And then the questions start pouring out. So that's always very neat to be proud in a healthy way of what you do. And I think I would miss that if I was never a therapist again.
I feel like my answers are a combination of both of yours. I have a lot of pride in what I do as well. I love when people ask questions about it. But I also love learning about people. And so I think I would miss being able to create like a safe place for people to fully unravel and be like the most vulnerable version of themselves. And I can do that with my family and with close friends, but it's different when it's coming from someone who's completely unbiased, someone who's not emotionally involved in your life or attached to your situation. And so I get a lot of fulfillment out of being able to provide that space and that sense of safety for people who maybe they can't get that from family or friends. And so I think I would really miss that part of it.
Well, I'm glad that each of you found your way to therapy. And
I want to hear Gary and Lucy's alternative job
you're
universe.
right.
That's right.
Oh,
I'm not letting you guys get away with it.
Is it
I
the question
forgot.
is it Freudian that they didn't answer the question?
I forgot about that. I would do definitely something with creativity or design. And again, with like time freedom now, I'm able to do that. And so when I'm in between clients, I get to, paint something in my house or decorate something or redo a room. And I find so much joy from doing that. I like having the flexibility of doing both because I love my job as well. And so it's like the perfect balance right now. But I think if I didn't do social work at all, I would probably do something with home design.
So I stopped doing this the past couple of years, but before I coached girls volleyball for 15 years, club volleyball, and it was so much fun, so rewarding, so tiring. But I guess if I wasn't a therapist, I would, and time willing, it's a lot of evenings, a lot of weekends. I loved coaching volleyball, so maybe I'd go back to that.
And so our last question before we move into some audience Q&A, if you could give one piece of advice to another clinician who's looking to build a private practice, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, one piece of advice would be you may feel like you have to do this alone, but you don't. That between, on one end of the spectrum is like Google, which is very significant, and other spectrum is there are, specific people, be it like consultation groups, supervision specifically around this, you can get the help and support you need to feel confident enough to do this. It's worth feeling ready before you do it, and you're not going to feel ready entirely just from entirely like within yourself. Having that community and support is going to make a difference.
I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is to do your research. I see a lot of posts, people asking questions. What do I do here? How do I do this? Where do I go here? And a lot of times I tell people those questions have been answered before, either by Google. Google search answers most of the questions I see in like the Facebook mental health groups. And then, just searching the community forums. I love the Alma community forum. I think y'all know that with how much I post on there. But kind of going through there are a million podcasts out there that there's a period in my life where I listened to no music whatsoever, and it was all podcasts on private practice research. Almost got the great trainings. I took the trainings, Barbara Griswold's trainings on insurance. But I think that's one of the things that people get kind of wide, like, oh, private practice making this much money an hour, no. And it's like, why am I not getting clients? It's like, because you jumped in too quickly before doing your research. So my top piece of advice is do your research before you start, and continue to do it when you're still, I still do listen to the podcast. So never, ever stop doing your research.
I think my biggest advice that I would give someone starting a private practice is set your values in advance and then don't compromise them. So before you even start, get very clear with yourself on what you want your practice to look like. Time, availability, income, niche, all of that. And then don't compromise it. It will be, and I talked about this earlier, it's so tempting to just say yes to everything for various reasons, but you will not regret honoring your needs and honoring your values in the long run when you build your practice in a way that aligns with the life that you want to live.
Thank you. I really, it's been such a privilege to hear about each of your journeys, and I want to make sure we leave some time and space to answer some questions coming in from the audience. So the first one is whether you have any site or books that were helpful to you, or maybe podcasts that were helpful to you as you identified your niche or your particular area of focus within the field.
Are we allowed to list specific podcast names? Perfect. So Practice the Practice with Joe Sanok was the very first one. It was recommended to me by the group practice owner that I worked for. And Joe does a lot of stuff. So that one there is really good. And then Private Practice Startup is really good. And a lot of these also have Facebook groups. So if you find a podcast, there's also likely a Facebook group with, I know some of them have quizzes and forums and community and stuff like that. Those are the two big ones that I really liked.
I would approach the question backwards in a way and ask, of the clients that I've been seeing or that I've ever seen in my life, what was interesting to me? Did I, this person, I was working on like a phobia with them, but I don't know much about that. And that was kind of interesting. Yeah, I'm going to read a few articles, watch a few YouTube videos, and then maybe look for any kind of continuing education or, for webinars that I can take that aren't too expensive to see, oh yeah, is this a niche that I'm interested in? Then at that point, I'm like, okay, I want to do more of this. And then can you maybe advertise it a little bit more?
Yeah, I don't think I read or listened to podcasts to help develop niche. I kind of took Paul's perspective of life experiences and what has stood out to me in my own work as a clinician, and then kind of expanded on that.
Great. Paul, a question for you. In terms of how do you build a caseload of supervisees? How have you been able to identify folks who might benefit from those services that you now offer?
Yeah, two main ways. One is looking for independent contractor jobs with group practices or nonprofits that are seeking to have someone who is specifically providing supervision hours for their employees. And so, through that, that's a mix of looking on just for regular job forums, as well as just being connected to, going back to sort of the networking question, connected to places that are near you or that employ a lot of LMSWs or whatever early career therapists. The second is using both the community hub as well as other sort of social media places that there may be either LMSWs or early career therapists who are looking for supervision. A piece of feedback I often hear is that sort of paid supervision, especially when you're a therapist, is extremely overpriced, and so people aren't going to do it. I think you won't necessarily, depending on, unless you have a very specific niche and are willing to be very patient, find that you may make as much per session as you do seeing a client. So I'd say also ask yourself, do I value and love this enough that I'm willing to offer it at a price point that someone who is a full-time working therapist would be willing to afford to get that support? So basically also pricing yourself in a way that is more likely to attract people, as well as making sure that when you do advertise this, you're saying these are the things that, again, are my niche. This is what I have a lot of experience in. This is how I could be supportive to you as a supervisor.
All right, we have time for one more question. And this is one that we were actually talking about when we were chatting prior to starting the webinar. How have each of you created a sense of community and connection while in private practice?
Oh, if they're talking about community with other clinicians, I can speak to that a little bit. So I would recommend going on Facebook and finding a Facebook group for mental health professionals in your area. Usually it's used for referrals, but you can also post in there that you want to, meet other people in the field, and you can meet up. And I've met people that way. Another way, which this may sound silly, is finding other clinicians in your area through the same platforms that clients find their clinicians through. Psychology Today, you can search by your city, and then reaching out that way and just saying, hey, I'm a fellow clinician. I'd love to get to know you and meet. And I've also done that as well. So it definitely sounds awkward or uncomfortable, and I have had to get out of my comfort zone a lot with that, but it's also been really effective at meeting other professionals in my area.
To tack on to that, Lucy, I write, and this is something I'm doing, I've been waiting for school to end, is start your own group. There are those groups on Facebook, and those are fantastic, but start your own. We tend to stop supervision when we become fully licensed because we don't want to keep paying for it, but we shouldn't really stop supervising and consulting. Group practices are great for that, but for us solo practitioners, we don't have that. So go into Facebook, start, posting those bigger groups and say, I'm starting a consultation group. We're going to meet every Wednesday at 1:30 for an hour and a half. And here's the topic. And not only you talking with people who you're talking about your niche, your specialty, you're creating that sense of community. Referrals, that's going to be more people that are going to say, especially if you start the group, people are going to look at you more so as the expert. So not only go in those groups, but don't be afraid to start your own.
I feel like we could probably continue, and I'm sorry to cut you off,
No, yeah,
Paul.
please.
I feel
No,
like
that's
we
okay.
could
I was just going
probably
to say, I
continue.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably continue this all afternoon. But we are coming to the end of our time together. And I want to first just thank our panelists so much for joining us today and being truly generous in sharing their expertise and experiences. And I also want to thank all of you who chose to take some of your time to join us today to participate in this conversation. We will be sending out a recording via email if you'd like to watch it on demand or share it with a friend or colleague. Again, thank you for joining, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Yeah.